Hello, Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Have a first-time guest on the show today. I have Matt Citak, who is managing editor for Giants.com, the website that I'm sure all Giants fans are familiar with. Matt, thank you for taking some time out of your summer, taking some time out of your busy day for hanging out with me for a little while.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Happy to be here.
So let me start with this. This is a new role for you. This is a new role for you. You've been working for the Giants now for how long?
So it is coming up on 6 years. This upcoming
Wow,
season will be my 7th season working for the Giants. It's been a
nice.
long road. Started as an intern, worked freelance for a year, got through the COVID period, got hired full time, and then a couple of years later, I finally got my promotion to managing editor.
There you go. And I'm jealous of you guys for the simple reason that first of all, you're in the building every day, you're around these guys every day, and you guys have a much better vantage point than we do during practice. You're killing me. You guys kill me with this. With you put us invariably. PR puts us on the patio to watch practice, and if anybody knows what the field setups look like, you know there's three different fields, and invariably, I think Brian Dable does this on purpose. Everything's done in practice as far away from the media as possible. Even when we're inside, we're in one end zone, and everything that happens is done at the other end zone. Like, come on, Brian, cut us a break.
Yes, I just like it to be known that I have no say whatsoever in where they put you guys or which direction the team goes in during practice. But yeah, I am grateful that we do get to kind of maneuver around the sidelines as we please. And when the team is practicing red zone drills in the far end zone from where you guys are, I kind of get to stand right up at the line of scrimmage, which is great. It gives me a great vantage point.
There you go. Well, that's the advantage of working for a team versus being part of the evil New York, New Jersey media.
You guys are not evil.
Well, let's be honest. Some of us are evil. All right. Some of
No
us are
comment.
evil. All
No
right.
comment.
We're gonna just leave that one there. Nobody at Big Blue View is evil, but some of us in the New York Giants media are evil. All right.
Yeah, I'll say some are a little kinder than others. I'll put it that
we'll
way.
just we'll just we'll just leave that one right there. So hey, let's talk about a couple of the things that you do. We can find you, your written work sometimes at on giants.com. We find you on Big Blue View Kickoff every so often. Um or I don't even how often do you do Big Blue View Kickoff or Big Blue Kickoff, excuse me.
Yeah, so Big Blue Kickoff Live, I host, during the off season at least twice a week. So it's typically 2 to 3 times a week, and then once we get to the regular season or once we get to training camp, we tend to sometimes get a few more hosts into the rotation, between
Mhm.
me, John Schmelk, Paul Dottino, Lance Meadows back. Last season Madeline Burke hosted one day, so I'm not sure exactly the rotation of hosts once training camp and the regular season kicks in, but I should be on Big Blue Kickoff Live at least twice a week, if not more. The more the merrier. I
There
like
there
to
you go. Got to ask you a Dottino question.
say. Let's hear
He's always Mr. Sunshine, Mr. 100 miles an hour, Mr. Fired up all the time. And I love P Dot. He's great and all of that, but do you ever just look at him like, man, can you slow down just a little bit once in a while?
Yes, that does happen. I'd say more than once in a while. I have to kind of look at him as we're on Big Blue Kickoff Live together, and I'm just kind of give him a look like, "Come on, man! Like we're all rooting for the Giants here. We're all at
Yeah.
least this time of year optimistic, but definitely sometimes I tell him once we get off air, like Paul, why don't we pump the brakes just a little bit?
Oh yeah, Paul is a special guy. Let's put it
He
that way.
he really
You,
is, and hey, we love the optimism.
yeah, and I was going to say that is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is optimism. And as you said, you've been with the team now for a few years, and I've been covering the team since 2007. Fully credentialed for probably 12 years now. But this off season feels different. It just feels different. Just in terms of optimism, in terms of what's been done. And of course there's that cloud of 3-14 and 9-25 hanging over the team for the last 2 years. But does it feel different to you, being around the building, being around guys every day?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has a different feel this offseason, especially since the offseason workout program kicked off just over 2 months ago, which was right before the draft. So, like I said, this is my seventh season. So my first season was going into 2019 when the Giants had, Eli Manning was still here, what turned out to be his last season, going into Daniel Jones's rookie season. And there was, a buzz around the building at that time too. And I think a big part of it, obviously, is having the rookie quarterback, that first
Hmm.
round pick rookie quarterback, which Jackson Dart, this is the first time the Giants have selected a quarterback in the first round since Daniel Jones 6 years ago. So that alone, and the way that Jackson Dart performed in these spring practices during OTAs, during minicamp, definitely has, it gives it a different feel around the building. But it's not only that, because it's the addition of Russell Wilson as well. No one's confusing Russell Wilson for the Russell Wilson of 10 years ago. However, he showed this spring that he definitely still has some gas left in the tank. And he just brings this level of leadership that felt like the Giants have been missing since Eli Manning retired. So,
Hmm.
all of that combined with obviously the potential of having an elite defense, during OTAs and minicamp, of course, we all know contact is not allowed. The offensive line, the defensive line, they are not getting into, the normal, engagement or whatever you want to call it, contact that they
Well,
do during training camp.
at least not on purpose.
And
You know, Jermaine Illuminor and Brian Burns and some of the guys about that, or James Hudson, and ask some of them about that, and that was interesting. But yes, you're right.
yeah, but of course, when we get back to the building a month from now and training camp begins, the pads come on. That is when the trenches really can get into their actual matchups and really have those like one-on-one
Hmm.
situations that we kind of saw the wide receivers and defensive backs have during the last couple of weeks. But all of that being said, the way that Abdul Carter looked throughout just about every single team practice or team drills during practice in OTAs and minicamp, he just has that look where he just looks different out there.
Hmm.
I turned on Good Morning Football the other day because Rashad Jennings was guest hosting, and he was talking about Odell Beckham Jr.'s first spring offseason workout program with the Giants over a decade ago. And he said that you can tell very quickly that Odell just moved differently from everyone else. And that's the same. I had that same feeling watching Abdul Carter. Now, again, there's no contact. So the tackles were not engaging with him like they will a month from now. But just his quickness and his ability to bend is just it's something I have not seen in person from someone on the Giants in years. And that's with, Brian Burns being here, Kayvon Thibodeau. Like, no disrespect to those guys, because those guys I think are fantastic. And the three of them together, I think, give the Giants perhaps the deepest edge group in the NFL. But just Abdul Carter's quickness, his athleticism, he just looks different out there. And so all of that combined, the quarterbacks, Abdul Carter, the defense, the additions made on defense overall, that is what has led to this, feeling of optimism, which,
Right.
it's June. So now is the time where
Hmm.
optimism is surely allowed, but none of it matters
Hmm.
until the games start and the team starts producing and hopefully coming up with some W's.
Absolutely. And you said that sometimes it looks different, and there are certain players, a few guys over the time period that I've covered the Giants, where you look at these guys working out on the field and you're like, that just doesn't look the same as everybody else. It just doesn't. And those guys are rare. And I did really like, you know, Andre Patterson's description of Abdul Carter the other day. I don't know if you were in that scrum when we were talking to Patterson, who's the defensive line coach, and he said the unique thing about Carter isn't necessarily the physical skill. It's the instinct and the knowledge that to know where he should go and where he should attack and where he can win simply based on, looking at the guy trying to block him or feeling the guy trying to block him. He said that's something, and I couldn't help think about Kayvon when he said this because Kayvon's a guy that sometimes has gotten stymied, when his first move doesn't, when his first move hasn't worked. But he said this is a kid who knows where to go and what to do and how to win without having to be taught. And that's a rare skill.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I feel like, we saw it last year at Penn State. I mean, the guy lined up at the edge for the first time in his career and was the most dominant pass rusher in all of college football. I mean, he could not be stopped. He had, I believe it was 12 sacks, 11 and a half sacks, 23 plus tackles for loss, which led the nation. I mean, and
Mhm.
this comes after his first 2 years, he was playing off ball linebacker for the Nittany
Mhm.
Lions. So, yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
obviously Coach Patterson knows significantly more than I do. He spent a lot more time with Abdul than I've gotten the opportunity to. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to see, and due to all of the talent that the Giants have on the defensive line, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence. I mean, Abdul Carter is gonna probably, as a rookie at least, my guess is he will see a decent amount of snaps lined up inside. I mean, he's gonna be lined up, it sounds like, all over the defense, but he's gonna probably get some opportunities to be lined up inside. And, given the talent around him, he's gonna get a lot of one-on-one opportunities, at least to start. I mean, if he comes in and all of a sudden, is winning every one-on-one matchup and is getting to the quarterback every other play, chances are opposing offenses are going to change their game plans and might throw a second guy to block him. But yeah, he's going to get an opportunity early on to showcase that high football IQ that we saw last year at Penn State. And I mean, I can't think of a pass rusher getting thrown into a better situation just in terms of the talent around him. I mean, again, between those first four guys, Giants really have the potential to be one of the top defensive lines in the entire NFL and certainly one of the top pass rushes. I mean, the unit had a lot of success last year, and that was with Dexter Lawrence and Kayvon missing a combined 10 games. Azeez Ojulari missed 6 games. Brian Burns was playing through injuries throughout the whole season. You would think come training camp, come week one, hopefully everyone will be healthy and ready to go. And then you throw Abdul Carter in with an improved secondary, and it has the makings of just an elite pass rush. So hopefully we get to see that.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I get asked all the time if the Giants can be a top 10 defense. And if you go purely by points per game allowed, they missed being a top 10 defense last year by 3 points a game. One field goal. With the amount of talent that they have amassed, it's kind of hard to see them, not improving by a field goal.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I've been saying this since the draft concluded that the Giants, you know, I would say the linebacker position has not changed much from last year. There's more depth now with some of the free agents brought in, some of the
Mhm,
veterans, but up front and in the secondary, the Giants have made significant strides on paper, at least. Now, of course,
mhm,
none of it matters till they start producing in games, but at least on paper, they've gotten a lot better on this in the secondary and up front. And obviously, those are two of the, the most important levels of the defense. You would think that that will lead to upgrades and improvements for the entire unit. And on
mhm.
top of just all of the talent added on the defensive side of the ball, an improved offense is going to go a long way in helping the defense. Last year, how many times did the offense go 3 and out, and the defense, after coming up with a big stop, has to immediately trot back out there, and you can see the guys are just gassed. And I
Mhm.
felt like as the season went on, you saw that more and more, and the defense just at times looked tired because they were out there for so long. Having Russell Wilson now under center and Malik Neighbors going into year two, hopefully a healthy offensive line with the same 5 starters from last year returning. Hopefully the offense is able to produce a little more consistently, and that's just going to help the defense get more, time to get their energy back before trotting back out there. So it's based on all of the additions made on both sides of the ball, quite frankly. I don't see how the defense doesn't take a big step in 2025.
Before we get completely into the offensive side, one last thing I did want to talk to you about defensively is the fact that for me, I think one of the most fascinating things about the upcoming season is how the Giants put all the pieces together. Because you've got Abdul Carter, like you said, who can play a bunch of spots. You've got, instead of Dexter Lawrence and, well, Dexter Lawrence on the defensive line, you've got you've got 5 or 6 guys now with NFL resumes, plus Darius Alexander, who was looked at as a steal, being selected in the 3rd round of the draft. So for me, that's one of the fascinating things. I happen to be a Yankee fan, and every night I look at the lineup because it's like Aaron Boone's got 12 guys for 10 spots. And it's like, how's he putting this together tonight? And on a week to week basis, I think I'm going to be asking the same question about Shane Bowen, is how he's going to put this together this week.
Yeah, I mean, that has been probably one of the biggest questions since the selection of Abdul Carter, and I guess throw Darius Alexander in there too, is how is Shane Bowen going to deploy all of these pieces? And quite frankly, I think we both agree it's a great problem to have. I don't know exactly how Shane Bowen is going to do it. I think it's probably going to switch on a week to week basis based on the matchup. I think there could be weeks where we see Abdul Carter uh, you're serving as like a quarterback spy. Week one with the matchup against Jaden Daniels, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Abdul Carter is sort of just spying Jaden Daniels the whole game because he's
Mhm.
certainly athletic enough to keep up with him speed wise, Jaden Daniels. But yeah, I mean, that is a great question. And I do think it's going to change each and every week. I don't think there's going to be just one constant, consistent answer when it comes to how is he going to do it. But it is a good problem to have. And Shane Bowen basically he said that himself when he spoke to you guys a couple weeks
Mhm.
ago. And I'm glad you brought up the defensive interior on the defensive line because I don't know if you heard when Coach Patterson was talking last week. It was kind of when everyone was crammed around Charlie Bullen asking him about Abdul Carter, and it was just
Mhm.
very small crowd around
I
Coach
I I
Patterson.
I heard because it was me and Coach.
Okay, it
It
was
was
you.
me and
Okay, I
Coach for
couldn't
a
remember.
while. It was just
Couldn't
the 2
remember
of
who it
us
was.
for a little
So
while.
then, so then you remember what he said about Roy Robertson Harris. I mean,
Mhm.
Coach Patterson's been here a couple years now, and he's obviously one of the most well-respected and probably one of the best defensive line coaches in the entire NFL. And he was raving about Roy Robertson Harris. I mean, he made it very clear that he thinks, even though Roy Robertson Harris has been in the league, I don't even know how many years now, eight
8 or
plus
9. 8
years.
or 9, yes.
Yeah. He thinks that there is still a lot of untapped potential there. He said, I don't think he's ever been really taught how to use his length to his advantage. If there's anyone that's going to be able to do that, to teach him, it's Coach Patterson. So I think that is potentially one of the more underrated or most underrated offseason moves the Giants made the last couple of months. All the attention has been on obviously the quarterbacks, Abdul, even Darius Alexander, but Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland, but no one's really talking about Roy Robertson Harris. And I think he has a great opportunity to, I'm not going to say earn the full time playing spot next to Dex, because again, with all those 3 edge rushers, I feel like we're going to see some of them lined up on the inside at times. But Roy Robertson Harris has a chance to really make an impact on the Giants defense this year.
Absolutely. And talking to Coach Patterson is always interesting. I mean, just because of what he knows. And it's funny because he he used the phrase the other day in talking about Abdul Carter. He used the phrase top of the rush. You talking about, when he gets to the top of the rush, he knows how to win, whether to go in, whether to go out, whether to bull rush, whether to bend the edge, all of that. And I said, Coach, I said, just, for those who might not be sure what you mean by top of the rush, can you explain that? And he did something that kind of like took me back for a second, because he reached out and he put his hands on me and he said, "Here, it's like this." you know, I said, and I was like, "Whoa, wait a second, coach." you know,
That's great.
yeah, but I was like, "Okay, here we go." but yeah, but that made me laugh. But he's fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's talk offense a little bit. Let's talk Russ. Let's you know, and 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 it's interesting because in truth, what everybody really wants to know about Russell Wilson and the Giants at this point is when Russ is going to get replaced. you know, that seems to be the big topic, is when Jackson Dart's going to play. And I think the reality of it is the Giants would like that to be later rather than sooner, because that means things are going better in 2025. But just talk about, you're around Russ, you're around the team, you see his interactions with people a lot more than we do in the media. Just talk about Russ's impact on the building and the team so far and what you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, Russ, I said this earlier, he just brings like a leadership presence that really has kind of been vacant for a couple of years now. He commands the offense, he commands honestly the whole team, kind of has like a command over the building as well. I mean, he it did not take long for him to, win all of us over on the business side of things. Us on our side, players don't necessarily have to be, the friendliest or want to have any sort of, talk relationships or conversations with us. But Russ does that. I mean, Russ is nice. Doesn't matter if he's talking to a teammate or to one of us, shows us just the utmost respect at all times. He's really been great and a welcome presence here. And I think we saw throughout the spring, and as I said earlier, he has plenty of gas left in the tank. I mean, we know the famous moon balls. We saw it last year at Pittsburgh. We've been seeing it for years now, but he's did it consistently throughout the spring, throwing it to several different wide receivers on those moon ball passes. Jalen Hyatt seemed to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of those passes, but he really was spreading the ball around to everyone. And he sort of, it seems like when he's out there, he just raises the floor of this offense. I mean, again, it's not Russ from 10 years ago. I don't expect him to rush, to 100 plus times in a season, but his arm strength is incredible. I think that's what surprised me the most. Not that I thought he did not have a strong arm, but I guess I didn't realize how actually strong of an arm he still has. I mean, even throwing like little short 5-yard passes to some of his receivers, he guns it in there. The ball is at the receiver's hands like immediately upon Russell releasing the ball. So he's really just been impressive in just about every single way. And, I've said this on Big Blue Kickoff Live since the selection of Jackson Dart, where I have not spoken to Brian Dable about this, but in my opinion, I think in an ideal world, Jackson Dart doesn't start at all this year because Russell Wilson is out there playing great football and the Giants are winning games and in the playoff hunt. And there's just no reason to turn the offense over to Jackson Dart if that is the case. Obviously, we don't know if that's going to happen. Coming off a 3-14 season, I'm not going to say like that's the expectation, of course. But in an ideal world, Jackson doesn't see the playing field much, or if at all, because Russ is just lighting it up, and the Giants' offense is playing great, and they're winning football games. I think that's what we would all love to see in an ideal world.
Agreed. Something I have to say about Russ is Russ has one tremendous talent that I'm not sure you've even noticed. when Russ speaks at the podium, you talked about his relationships with people around the building and how he talks to everybody and he gets to know everybody by name. We have actually jokingly in the media room, at least when he spoke during OTAs, we put an over under on how many people, players, coaches, people within the organization Russ would name when he spoke. We put the over under at, I think one of the guys put the over under at 12 and a half. In a 10, in about an 11-minute speech, I went through and I counted. Russ named 25 different people in the organization, players, coaches, equipment people. It was like, you've got to be kidding me. you know, and I'm like, it's amazing to listen to. It's just amazing to listen to this guy just work like everybody's name that he can possibly work into a press conference. He works into it. It's incredible.
Yeah, that does not surprise me at all. I mean, you saw it with his introductory press conference over Zoom all the way back in March. He named just about every single member of the offense, and not only the
Mhm.
starting offense, he named backups. I mean, that was the first time we really heard him kind of rave about Jalen Hyatt, which is
Mhm.
why I think what we saw in the spring, that connection between those two in particular, stands out because he clearly has been a fan of Jalen Hyatt since day one, and then when it came to actually showing it on the field, he did. I mean, they connected
Right.
just about every single practice, whether it's deep passes, short routes, intermediate routes. I mean, the two of them clearly have very quickly developed a good chemistry, and not just Jalen
Mhm.
Hyatt. Saw the same thing with Darius Slade too. I mean, those two could both be in for career years with Russ, just based on what we saw during the spring. But yeah, I mean, again, that's just the sort of leader and teammate that Russell Wilson is. I mean, he's never gonna, you know, bask in the spotlight himself. He wants that to be shown onto his teammates who maybe don't get the spotlight quite as much as, the 10-time Pro Bowler, the Super Bowl winning quarterback that he is. So, yeah, again, that's just another example of him just being a great leader and the leader of this team now.
Yeah, it's interesting with Jalen Hyatt too, because Jalen Hyatt may never be what you would consider to be a complete wide receiver, you know, where you're going to target him on every route in the route tree. But he's got that vertical speed. He's got that deep ability that the Giants haven't been able to take advantage of for the last 2 years. And I think everybody is interested to see if Russell Wilson, when it starts to count, because we've seen Jalen Hyatt, light up the spring and the summer before. I think everybody's anxious to see if Russell Wilson can bring that out of him, when it starts to count.
Of course. I mean, that's quite frankly the only thing that matters. Doing it in the spring only counts for so much. It doesn't actually mean anything until you do it come week one and then beyond.
Mhm.
But I will say this, I've been watching here for all three of the offseason workout programs that Jalen Hyatt has participated in. And this year, by far, has been the most impressed I've been with how he's looked. I mean, first of all, he showed up looking noticeably bigger. I mean, several coaches and players talked about how he put on, I don't want to, I don't know the exact numbers because we've heard anywhere from like 10 to 20 pounds of muscle. 20 pounds of muscle is a lot of muscle, but if you look at him, and I mean, for the fans watching, if you've seen photos of him through the spring, you see his arms; they are noticeably bigger. And sometimes when guys like that use their speed and verticalness to like that's the strengths of their game, when they put on that much muscle, it sometimes takes away from their speed or takes away from their quickness. Well, based on what we saw from the spring, that does not look like it is the case. I mean, Jalen Hyatt looks like he is just as fast as he's been for years now, but he has that muscle added on as well. And of course, I mentioned him and Russ connected on several of those moonball passes throughout the spring, which is great to see. We love that. And we've seen Jalen Hyatt do a little bit of that in his limited, production in the NFL. Russ even mentioned that game was it 2 years ago against the Cardinals in week 2 where he caught that, was it 50-yard pass from Daniel Jones, which kickstarted that second half comeback. In
Hmm.
his rookie year, he also had that game against the Patriots where he had 5 catches for, just about 100 yards. We've seen him have little flashes of what,
Hmm.
we all expected from him when he was drafted. He hasn't been able to put it together on a consistent basis, and I do think the quarterback play has something to do with that. It doesn't get That's not the whole reason. It's not fair to put that all on the quarterback play, but it definitely has some impact on it. And there is no doubt that Russell Wilson is the best and most accurate deep passer that Jalen Hyatt will have played with since coming into the NFL. That is without a doubt. So I do think Russ's strengths and Jalen's strengths really mesh together very well, which is why I think we could see a big, step up from Jalen this year.
I have to ask you one more Jalen Hyatt question, and it's a really, really important one. All right. I've been kidding Jalen Hyatt. It's been kind of a running joke between the two of us ever since the first time I talked to him as a rookie, and I have not seen him this year. Has the mustache finally come in? He's been working on that mustache for 3 years. Has it finally come in?
To be honest, it kind of, from what I've noticed, I haven't really noticed anything, which makes me think it's kind of just the same as what it's been
Oh,
the
he's
last couple of years.
oh, oh my 3 years and all he's got up there, tiny little wisps of hair that you have to actually look for. It's kind of amazing. Anyway, Matt, I appreciate the time and the insight, and hopefully we'll do this again. Um, folks probably know, but just remind them where they can find Big Blue Kickoff. I always want to call it Big Blue View Kickoff. I keep wanting to do that, but I know better. It's just force of habit. When I get to Big Blue, there's always a view on the end of it.
Yeah.
So, but let them know where they can find the show, and where they can find you on social and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so Big Blue Kickoff Live, we stream every day on Giants.com, the Giants mobile app, and the Giants YouTube channel from 12:30 to 1:30. Now starting next week, we are taking a little 2-week break because our production department has off. So there will be a little break from BBK, but we will be back. I guess was it July 14th, 15th, whatever that Monday is.
Hmm.
And we've been doing these team previews where we speak to a beat reporter from each of the teams the Giants are playing this year, get some insight on those teams and the matchups. So once we come back, we're going to kick those into high gear, right leading into training camp. We'll see about what time BBK is on once training camp starts, because we have not gotten the training camp schedule yet. But so
Hmm.
that might be a slight change. But yeah, every day, sometime early afternoon, Giants.com, Giants mobile app, and the Giants YouTube channel. And then for my socials, you can find me on Twitter or X at Matt Citak. Pretty simple. Yeah, I
Hmm.
post all my articles there. Sometimes tweeting press conferences. Yeah, Matt Citak at Twitter and at X.
Good deal. All right, Matt, thank you so much for the time. Giants fans, thank you as always for watching. Please stay safe out there, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.